Good morning, and thanks for joining me for this Common Part B Portable X-ray Supplier Rejections and Denials webinar. I am Mary Muko. I'm a specialist with the Provider Outreach and Education team at WPS, and I'll be your host today. I am joined by my friend and colleague, Aline Sigler, that's helping with some behind-the-scene tasks. Before I get started, I do want to remind you to review disclaimers that I've placed. It's at the end of the PowerPoint presentation if you look at the notes view of the PowerPoint. There are details on slide 49 that you should be aware of. The information we plan to present today is current, but it is subject to change. We do ask you to refrain from recording any portions of this presentation. We are recording it and we will publish it on our Encore Presentations webpage in just a couple of days and also on our YouTube channel. And if you do not wish to participate in this recording, you may leave the webinar at any time. You will also find the CPT copyright notice on slide 50 of the presentation materials. Your continued participation does infer that you agree to the terms of that copyright notice. Here is the objective, and agenda for today's event. Our objective, of course, is to help learners avoid those rejections and denials. The agenda should look very familiar to all of you, as these are the topics identified in that webinar description that you were able to review when you registered. During this session today, I plan to define both rejections and denials, and then I'll be revealing the reasons for rejections and denials on WPS submitted claims for your specialty. And your specialty, of course, is portable X-ray supplier. I'm going to share with you ways to fix the rejections and avoid both rejections and denials, all while providing you with a great number of resources. So in order to talk about rejections and denials, we need to back up just a little bit and talk about the claims process. Based on a law that requires it, most providers submit claims electronically. Reports generate, and these confirm claim receipt, and they also report more specific information about those data requirements for claim submission in Medicare. Now, one of these reports is the 276-277 report. It is the Medicare 276-277 companion guide, and I've embedded a link to that document in your presentation materials. That guide is prepared by our electronic data interchange, or EDI staff, and it really helps submitters understand the claim requirements and also know when they need to correct or resubmit these claims, or the claims to Medicare. Now, when electronic claims come into Medicare, these reports that I'm talking about are all based on what we call pre-pass edits. Now, claims that move past those pre-pass edits, everything's okay, are going to generate a remittance notice or a remittance advice. Sometimes we refer to that as the RA. Some people even shorten it up and just call it the notice or the remit. There are two formats of the RA, the electronic remittance advice, or the ERA, and the standard paper remittance advice, or the SPR. Now, with few exceptions, most providers are going to receive that electronic notice. The RA provides important information to the provider. For adjudicated claims, you can find information about all of those things listed here at the bottom of the slide, including adjustments to the claim. There's information on it regarding the denials. If something's missing, you'll see that, and even information about refunds and offsets. So a lot of information on that remit that you should be looking at. Now, when looking at that remit, you're going to find various reason and remark codes, and these are typically in an alphanumeric order, or format rather. When claims pay differently than billed, a claim adjustment reason code appears on the claim, or on the remittance advice rather. We call those CARCs, C-A-R-C-S is the acronym, and sometimes a remittance advice remark code will also appear on the RA. These expand on the details that are described by the reason code to provide more details about the adjustment to the claim. There's another type of code that you'll find on the remittance advice. It's called a group code, and group codes assign financial liability for any unpaid balance on the claim. There are a couple on this slide. A CO group code stands for contractual obligation, and this means that the provider is liable and can't bill their patient. A PR group code means that the patient is financially responsible. Now, WPS hears a lot of comments about these codes. So often our customer service representatives, when assisting a provider, may hear a comment such as, these are really very cryptic. Sometimes the comments will be that these reason and remark codes contain outdated acronyms. Well, we'd really like to help. There is another contractor, not WPS, who maintains these codes for CMS. You can find a link to the code lists on the Washington Publishing Company's website. It is on their website where you can find contact information should you wish to suggest a change to those code lists, including those code explanations. This is information that I've included in the presentation that describes a rejection, and I want to drive home that a rejection is very, very different from a denial. There's very different things that you need to consider doing or actions you need to consider taking if your claim is rejected versus if it's a denial. A rejected claim is processed, but it's never adjudicated. It's unprocessable. It's returned on the front end, even though you'll receive notice about that rejection on your remittance advice. The reason why it's rejected is that something's illogical. The claim is missing something. Maybe it includes incorrect information. Because a rejected claim is never adjudicated, there are no appeal rights. What you need to do is resubmit the service to Medicare. For rejected claims, one clue that the claim is unprocessable will be on that remittance advice. You'll see an MA130 and a CO16 code. That means the claim is unprocessable. You need to fix it and resubmit it. And of course, for these rejected claims, the patient cannot be held liable. Let's look at a denial on the other hand. A denial is actually adjudicated. There could be multiple reasons why Medicare denies a service. It could be based on a law, or what we call a statutory requirement. Perhaps the information reported on the claim does not meet medical necessity for that particular item or service, or based on the information on the claim, it doesn't meet medical necessity. And remember that a frequency denial of any type is considered a form of medical necessity. So that, my friends, would be just a kind of a flag in the air to you. If Medicare is rejecting something as medically necessary or based on frequency, you might then recognize that in the future that item or service may be denied by Medicare based on medical necessity. And that would be one of those situations where you would consider presenting your patient with an advance notice or advanced beneficiary notice of non-coverage, or an ABN. For denied claims or services on those claims, you will find an MA01 code on the remittance advice that provides rights to an appeal. With few exceptions, when a service is denied by Medicare, there is a right to an appeal. There are some exceptions. For denied services, the patient liability is determined. During the next slides, I'm going to discuss whether you need to correct or appeal the claim. After reviewing that remit, you're going to need to choose your action. So for an unprocessable or a rejected claim, you need to fix it and resubmit it. If the claim or a claim line denied, there may be multiple actions to choose from. You might be able to simply resubmit the service. You might use the clerical error reopening, or what we call the SIR process, to fix a clerical error, and CMS defines these as minor errors or omissions as human or mechanical errors. You might also consider an appeal. The remittance advice will provide appeal rights when those rights are available. I will discuss appeals just a little bit more later in this webinar. Now, registered users of our SecureNet Access Portal, or SNAP, can render or request a clerical error reopening or request an appeal. Now, this is just a self-service tool that really does offer the most efficiencies. And our portal user manual provides illustrations and step-by-step instructions on how to use the portal feature. And I'm going to pull over the home page of the WPS website, and I've linked to that in your resource slides, so you will have access to that website. And here is the home page of the WPS website. I do want to point out where you can find that portal user manual. There is a link right here under the login box for those registered users of the SecureNet Access Portal. There's also at the bottom of every web page, and I'm going to scroll down, right in the center of that blue box, or kind of just to the right center of the blue box at the bottom of every page, you will see a link to the portal user manual. And again, that provides illustrations and step-by-step instructions on how to use all of the functionalities of the SecureNet Access Portal, including the clerical error reopening process. And again, that's just the fastest, most efficient way to fix a clerical error. You can also use the portal to request an appeal and to check on the status of the appeal. I mentioned to you earlier I was going to talk about appeals, and that in itself can be a 90-minute webinar or longer. But today we're talking about rejections and denials, but appeals are a very important process to fix those claim denials. So I do want to mention it just briefly. For claim denials, most often you can request an appeal. The purpose of the appeals process, of course, is to ensure the correct adjudication of claims. Physicians, suppliers, and beneficiaries all have the right to appeal claim determinations that are made by MACs. The beneficiary or his or her representative may request an appeal on any service processed for them. Providers and suppliers, though, may appeal services for which they've accepted assignment. Now, for unassigned claims, though, providers and suppliers can either act as the beneficiary's representative if the beneficiary signs an authorization statement, and in addition, they can request a redetermination on an unassigned claim if Medicare denied the service as not reasonable and necessary, or the provider or supplier billed in excess of the limiting charge. Now, the first level of appeal is the redetermination. It is the only level of appeal that is rendered by the Medicare Administrative Contractor, or the MAC. Additionally, there is 4 more levels of appeal. There is a minimum amount in controversy that applies to levels 3 and 5. And what that is, that amount in controversy, or what we like to call the AIC, it's a minimum dollar threshold that you need to meet in order to request that level of appeal. And you can combine like denials on more than one claim in order to reach that amount in controversy. I got a little bit ahead of myself here just a moment ago, and I showed you this slide. I include this slide whenever I talk about appeals because it's one of my favorite resources. It is published by CMS. It's available on their website. It's called the Fee-for-Service Appeals Process Flowchart, and they do update this annually. When you look at the flowchart itself, and I'm going to open that up and speak from it. I'm going to keep talking while it's opening here on my other monitor, and I'll pull it over. Oh, that was quick today. Pull it open for you and talk about it. Both the standard process for appeals and the expedited process is listed here on this flowchart, or shown here on this flowchart. The expedited process applies only to some Part A. Today I'm talking about Part B denials. So we're going to look to the left, that standard process. A claim is processed by the Medicare Administrative Contractor. That's referred to as the initial determination. Then they have, or the provider has 120 days to file the first level of appeal. That is the MAC redetermination. Remember, I just mentioned that's the only level of appeal that WPS does. And we have 60 days to render a decision and send notice. If the decision is not favorable or is partially favorable, not fully favorable, a provider has 180 days then to file the next level of appeal, which is the reconsideration by a qualified independent contractor. So as I've been talking about these steps to an appeal, and if you've been following along, you can see that they're each shown here on this flow chart. I mentioned to you earlier that there is an amount in controversy for levels 3 and 5. That's the Office of Medicare Hearings and Appeals. Sometimes we call this the ALJ hearing, which is the administrative law judge hearing, and level 5 is federal district court. The amounts in controversy are shown on this handy flow chart. The amount in controversy for 2026 for a third level of appeal is greater than or equal to $200. It shows right there. And in federal district court, there's $1,960. So you can see why this is one of my favorites. It's got all 5 levels. It's got the amounts in controversy. It's got days to file, the time limit for making decision, and it stays up to date because CMS updates it every year. What you want to be alert to is that they will publish at the bottom of the flow chart that the chart reflects the amounts for a particular calendar year. Really just mostly something that you need to pay attention to at the beginning of a new year each year, beginning of a new calendar year. So just a really handy item there. There is also a resource available on the WPS website called How to Appeal a Claim Determination. It tells you the process for requesting an appeal and talks about those 5 levels and some of those time frames and so on and so forth. All right, this brings us to this portion of today's webinar where I'm going to reveal to you the actual claims data, the information that tells you or reveals the top reasons for rejections and denials of WPS submitted claims. I used a tool that we call the data dashboard in order to pull the data that I plan to share with you today. That data dashboard is an interactive tool. It was designed by our data analysts in a department that we call Insight. That's our data team. There's different ways to view data in that particular dashboard. We can look at rejections. We can choose denials. We can look at Part A, Part B, both. Maybe I'm speaking to a group in Michigan and I'm going to focus only on denials or rejection information by state. Or maybe I even drill down to a county or multiple counties in a particular region of Michigan. I can look at reasons for rejections and denials. I can choose to place a HCPCS code or CPT code in the data slicers, as our data team calls them, in order to filter the data. I can also look by specialty, and that's what I've done for today. I'm looking at specialty 63, which is those claims submitted by portable X-ray providers or suppliers rather. So I'm going to try here. Sometimes it takes a little while to get to it. I want to show you what the dashboard looks like. I think you'll find it's just kind of amazing the amount of information that we can get. And the reason why this is so important to everyone is that CMS actually requires people like Aline and me, those of us in provider outreach and education, to develop education to make certain these rejections and denials don't keep happening. That's my goal. I'm providing this information today so that 3 months from now I can look at data and say, yeah, that education I provided helped. So I'm going to show you just a quick look at the data dashboard. So it makes sense as I'm talking about. I'm searching denials here. These are those data slicers that I talked about where we can just simply, by the click of this mouse, filter the information that we want to look for. We can look at rejections and denials, both, or one or the other. I can look at a particular specialty, such as specialty 63. The reason why nothing's showing up is because this is a HCPCS code for depression screening, and no portable X-ray provider is providing that service or submitting claims. So I'm going to clear out that filter and then see how quickly this populated, and I can see the codes, the denial reasons. I can choose to put in a particular code here if I'd like. I don't even have the specialty code in here, but I'm just showing you an example of how quickly all of this data can be pulled up. So CMS in their instructions to the MACs, not just WPS, but all the MACs, says you need to be looking at these claim submission, rejections, and denials and provide some education to avoid those in the future. So that's what this is all about, folks. That's why we're doing it today. We're avoiding those rejections and denials. Remember that objective on this slide I showed you earlier. So another thing that we can look at is trending denials, and I'm going to pull this back over really quick here. We can look at a particular reason. Look at the claim count for the current 3 months, the prior 3 months, the number of claims difference, the claim percentage change, and these arrows show us, are we trending upwards or downwards? Okay, so really quickly we can look at a particular reason for a rejection or a denial. We can look at the code and so on and so forth. So I'm sharing with you today Medicare claim submissions for both Jurisdiction 5 and Jurisdiction 8. Those are WPS's jurisdictions. Specialty 63, Portable X-ray Supplier. These submission dates, when they prepare the dashboard, they come in 3-month chunks. So the submission dates I analyzed for today's webinar is 9/1 through 11/30. That data was last refreshed on December 15th. So here then, I am revealing to you, just as advertised, the top reasons why WPS is rejecting claims for Specialty 63. These are in order, as in descending order. So the most common reason for claims rejected for your specialty for WPS claims is that the treatment was rendered in an inappropriate or invalid place of service. Remember, this is a rejection. What are you going to do? You're going to fix it, resubmit it. So check out that place of service. Make certain that it was reported correctly, that it wasn't transposed, and so on and so forth. Missing, incomplete, invalid provider identifier, submit a new claim. That one is pretty straightforward as well. Look at that provider identifier on the claim. Was it there to begin with? Was it incomplete, maybe partially keyed? Maybe there was a transposition when it was keyed. That provider identifier on the claim is incorrect. I'll show you later on the resource slides where you can find the claim form instructions that tell you what needs to go where on the claim, what's required, and what's situational. The third most common reason for rejections is the facility or lab name and address or PIN was missing from the claim. Again, you would fix it, resubmit it, go to those claim form instructions. What do you need to put where on the claim? And this reason or remark code that appears on your remittance advice is facility or lab name and address or PIN missing. That gives you a clue as to what you need to fix, where you need to go in order to make that correction or fill in the field on the claim and get that submitted off to Medicare. Claim must be submitted to RRB, and RRB is an acronym for Railroad Retirement Board. If the beneficiary is a retiree of the railroad, then his or her claims are to be submitted to the Railroad Board specialty contractor, which is Palmetto, not WPS. So fix it, resubmit it, but don't submit it to WPS, submit it to the Railroad Board specialty contractor. Next is invalid or missing modifier. Again, a good clue of what you need to check. Was it there to begin with on the claim, something that was required to be reported on the claim? And yes, there are modifiers to report for portable X-ray claims. Was it missing? Was it invalid? Was it keyed incorrectly? You need to fix it and resubmit it. More. Incomplete, invalid plan information for other insurance. This means that you told us there's another insurance, but you didn't give us all the information we need. So that would be a situational piece of information for the claim. It's not always needed, but if you tell us there's another insurance, then you need to give us all of the information about the plan. Claims should be submitted to United Mine Workers of America for processing, and this is for those beneficiaries who have their claims administered by another contractor, not WPS, because they are a retired miner. Okay, so those claims don't come to WPS, they're processed by another contractor. Patient insured HICN, there's an old acronym. I recognize that it's an old acronym, but this is how it prints out on those reports on that data dashboard that I showed you. HICN is the health insurance claim number, now since been replaced with the Medicare Beneficiary Identifier, or the MBI. So if the name and that number don't match, guess what's going to happen? Your claim is going to reject. Fix it, resubmit it. Missing, incomplete, invalid, ordering primary identifier, another straightforward reason for rejecting that claim, missing, incomplete, invalid, maybe it was keyed wrong. And then another kind of generic, this claim must be submitted to another contractor. Sometimes there's more than one reason on a claim for that rejection or that denial. So you'll see that some of these sometimes show a very, very similar reason for that rejection or denial. That's because maybe one prints out on the claim versus another claim using the other reason or remark code. I thought it would be interesting not only to share with you the reasons why WPS is rejecting claims for Specialty 63. So I looked at data to see those CPT codes or HCPCS codes that are being most often rejected for Specialty 63. And these are the top two codes. These are in descending order. And for each of these codes that I'm sharing with you, I'm also sharing the top two reasons why we rejected that code. So 71045 is a single view frontal chest x-ray. We are rejecting that because of the provider identifier being missing, incomplete, or invalid, or that service was rendered in an inappropriate place of service. I'm going to talk more about how to fix these a little bit later. 71046 is the CPT code for two-view chest x-ray, and these are just kind of flip-flopped in descending order. The top two reasons why we rejected 71046 for Specialty 63 providers during that time frame that I looked at that data was the same, wrong, inappropriate place of service, or invalid provider identifier. Q0092, that's a setup component for each radiologic procedure during both single patient and multiple patient trips, may be covered by portable X-ray suppliers, of course, assuming that those services are medically necessary and they meet all other Medicare requirements. We're rejecting this because that service is being billed in an inappropriate place of service. And the number two reason we rejected that was because the claim must be submitted to the railroad board specialty contractor. It shouldn't have been submitted to WPS. Next code is that 93010, the X-ray interpretation, facility lab name and address or PIN missing, and invalid, incomplete, missing provider identifier. And finally, the 74018, that's a single view of an X-ray of the abdomen. Again, very, very similar reasons for rejections for all of these codes, these top 5 codes that I'm talking about. Treatment rendered in an inappropriate or invalid place of service, and then missing, incomplete, invalid provider identifier. Make certain you're looking at those claim form instructions so you know what goes where on the claim form, both the paper claim, now most of you are submitting electronically. There is a crosswalk that we make available. That crosswalks, if you see it, or if it goes here on the paper claim, this is where it goes on the electronic claim, that field or area on the electronic claim that you need to make certain you're filling out appropriately. And I'll point that out to you in just a little bit when I talk about those resources. We just talked about, or I just talked about rejections. Now I'm going to talk about denials for Specialty 63. Again, these are in descending order based on the claim form or the claim dashboard that I showed you earlier and talked about, the number one reason WPS denied Specialty 63 claims for the time period I identified is that the services are denied because that patient is in a hospice. Okay, we're going to talk about how to fix these in just a bit. Number two reason, code modifier, facility disagree, send new bit claim or bill Part A. This would be a situation when that patient is in skilled nursing facility and there are consolidated billing rules that you need to take into consideration. Number three, this is a duplicate charge, and I'll tell you folks, I've been doing a lot of these webinars for specialties. I started with specialty 01, I'm up to specialty 63. This reason for claim denial shows up on nearly every specialty provider's in their data for WPS. We have been dealing with duplicate claims for as long as I've been in Medicare, and that's a lot of years. We have done a lot of education. We know that most providers are making a really great effort to avoid submitting a duplicate claim, but we need to make certain that our message is clear, that continued submission of claims without checking the status for that claim may be abusive, and we all know or should know that abuse may be viewed as fraud if it's not fixed. If providers are aware that there's an issue. We have been providing education about duplicate claims for a long time, and we will continue to do so. But it's my hope that just by talking with these providers or suppliers during these webinars that I've been hosting, that I'll alert them to the problem, and then we'll see in those training reports those claim denials decreasing versus increasing. Next, a SNF episode of care notice. SNF is skilled nursing facility. The SNF is the acronym that prints out in the reason remark codes. SNF episode of care notice has been filed for this patient. That means they're in a Part A covered stay. Oh, I'm so sorry. There, my Midwestern is coming out there. Treatment rendered in inappropriate or invalid place of service. Similar to the rejected claims, we are also denying claims for that reason. And here then are the codes for those denials. Starting with, just go back here and see if I missed. I did miss, this is a duplicate slide and I apologize for that. That hospice, no it's not. I apologize, folks. That was my error. That first bullet on this slide is these services denied because the patient is in a hospice. This is very similar, and that's what confused me. I apologize for this. This is the sixth most common reason for denial, and it says deny hospice service when provided by a non-attending physician. I saw that word hospice and I thought it was the same slide, so I apologize for that. That's another reason for denial, the sixth most common reason for denial, and we'll talk about all of these and how to fix them later. Collection of fee for service during periods of managed care. Now that, folks, is a very good example of what I talked about earlier. It's a little cryptic. What do you really mean? I actually sent this to our systems staff some time ago when I started doing this series of rejections and denials because I wasn't sure it really meant what I thought it meant, so I needed to verify that, and I was correct. What this means is that this denial is because the beneficiary has elected managed care. In other words, that beneficiary is elected to be enrolled into a Medicare Advantage plan. They do not have traditional or original Medicare. WPS processes claims only for those beneficiaries who have elected traditional or original Medicare, as opposed to Part C, which is a Medicare Advantage plan. Procedure or service not paid separately, that translates, folks, to bundling. And then the last one, Medicare does not pay for this service since the beneficiary is in a skilled nursing facility. So sometimes you'll see that those Reason codes are very, very similar, such as this one. Medicare doesn't pay for this service because the beneficiary is in a SNF, or we have the SNF episode of care notice been filed. We also have code modifier facility disagrees, send new claim, or bill Part A. All of these could relate to SNF consolidated billing rules, which I'll talk about in a bit. So the Q0092, we have identified that code before. That's that setup component. And this is being denied for these reasons. Code modifier facility disagree, send the claim or bill Part A, not B. These services are denied because the patient is in a hospice is the number 2 reason why we're denying that. For the R0070, that's the transportation of portable X-ray equipment and personnel to the nursing home for a single patient, and this is per trip. The reason why we are denying this code is right here. Code modifier facility disagrees, send new claim or bill Part A, same as the Q0092, most often because these are both being billed. These services are denied because the patient is in a hospice. A lot of that going on for this specialty. Next we have the 71046, the 2-view chest X-ray front and side views, and the 71045. I'm not going to read through these because they are those common denials that I've already talked about. I just wanted to show you what the data shows. These are the most common reasons that we're denying these codes. You might be wondering what these numbers are in the parentheses. That is the number of claim lines that we denied for that during that 3-month time frame for Specialty 63 providers. And here then is the last of the codes, the R0075, which is the transportation of portable X-ray equipment and personnel to the nursing home also. But this one is when more than one patient is being seen. And there are the 2 most common reasons for denials of that particular code, 626 denials. Now, if you think about it for a minute, with any denial, think of the costs associated with preparing that claim and submitting it to Medicare, only for Medicare to process the claim and deny the claim. That costs money too. Then you need to look at the remit. That costs money. Then you need to take action to receive the correct payment or make a correction. If it's a rejected claim, you're going to need to resubmit. In other words, folks, if you put a dollar amount with every rejection and denial, you can see that there's a lot of money that both the provider and the Medicare Trust Fund could save if we eliminate some of these rejections and denials. And I'm certain that's all part of the reason why CMS in their instructions to MACs says you will educate on these reasons for rejections and denials, these claim submission errors. So now we're going to move into that portion of today's webinar where I'm going to talk a little bit more about fixing and avoiding claim denials. You know, I mentioned that for rejections, you need to fix it and resubmit it. So I call these fixes versus another form of action. So for eligibility issues, you know, make certain that patient name and the MBI exactly match. If there is a middle initial used on the patient's Medicare card, then you need to place that middle initial on his or her claim, okay? Submit the services to the correct payer. If they are a railroad retirement board retiree, you need to submit to the specialty contractor that processes those claims. Medicare Advantage plans. Make sure you're asking your patients, can I see your card? Do you have more than one? Did you get a new card? You know, plans can change. They can move from Part C to Part B and back and forth. So make certain that those in your office responsible for that task are doing that. And they're asking not just, you know, once a year, but ask more often to see those cards and make certain that you're submitting services to the correct plan or the correct payer. Railroad Retirement Board. And in this case, we even talked about United Mine and the United Mine Workers of America. So things to keep in mind that someone else might need to process that claim, not WPS. Provider number fixes. You know, I talked about this earlier. Make sure that there's information on the claim to identify the provider, that there are no keying errors. Make sure that those provider enrollment records are valid and up to date. During claim processing, we pull that provider information into the system, and there are queries that happen to make certain that that provider number you're reporting is valid, it's up to date. That provider is indeed entitled to receive payment from Medicare. Make sure that rendering providers are associated with billing providers. That needs to be part of that provider enrollment process. And make certain there's an ordering provider on the claim form when there is a need to identify an ordering provider. Modifiers, make sure that it's there. Make sure that that modifier matches the procedure code or was valid on the date of service you billed. Sometimes there are new modifiers that are being added, so you need to pay attention to that date of service. Use modifiers for single and multiple patients that are served at the same location. This is the one that's very, very important for your particular specialty. So you want to make certain that you are following the guidelines shown in Chapter 13 of the Medicare Claims Processing Manual, and this addresses those modifiers that are to be used for single or multiple patients that are served at the same location. Very, very important. If it's missing, we're going to reject your claim. Okay, so that is section 90.3.4, and I've actually linked to it. I'm going to open it up real quick here. And it's section 90.3.4, so I'm going to do a Control F to help me find that. 90, whoop, I've got to key it right, 90.3.4. And right there it takes you to modifiers for single and multiple patients served at the same location. Okay, so that helps you quickly find the information needed, and there in that internet-only manual, CMS's IOM, it talks about the modifiers that you need to use. Okay. Next up, more help for you. We had a lot of situations where claims were denied for your specialty because the patient is in a hospice. So you need to verify eligibility for all providers to make certain you're submitting the claim to the correct contractor. We have availability to verify eligibility in the SecureNet Access portal. So once again, I have linked to the SecureNet Access portal here. We have an article on our website, or a resource on our website. The name of it is Billing Services During a Hospice Election. This provides a lot of great information to you about submitting your claim when that beneficiary has chosen or elected or to go into hospice or have hospice benefits versus that original traditional Medicare. There's also information in another, or in the Claims Processing Manual, in another chapter, Chapter 11, about processing hospice claims. So a lot of great resources there for you. That Chapter 11 includes information about the notice of election for hospice. It also talks about payment for hospice services that are provided by a physician, hospice attending physician services, and billing and payment for services unrelated to the terminal illness. When a beneficiary chooses to enroll in hospice, all of their terminal illness related claims are processed by that home health hospice MAC versus the traditional AB MAC. So there are times when a beneficiary may be seen by a physician because he or she has a service that's unrelated to their terminal illness. So let me give you an example here. A beneficiary may have a cancer diagnosis, he or she enrolls into hospice, but they fall and break their ankle at home. That ankle break is unrelated to the terminal illness, so those services can separately be identified and payable. So we've got information in Chapter 11 that speaks to that. We also have a YouTube video on the WPS website. It's called Actions on Claims, Hospice Denials, that I would recommend that you look for if you're seeking even more information about how to avoid these denials. Duplicate denials, I talked about this one earlier. If you use a billing service or if you just auto rebill every 30 days without checking the status of your claim, stop doing it or ask them to stop doing that. That is considered a form of abuse, you need to make certain that you are checking the status of your claim before just submitting that claim. You can check the status of your claim by using SNAP, or you can also check the interactive voice response system. I have linked here to the IVR operating guide that provides how you can check status by using that interactive voice response system. That's that system you use the telephone or touch tone keypad in order to get information or provide information. You know, make certain you're billing appropriately. Sometimes there is a modifier that you can or should submit based on your documentation, of course, that will avoid the denial of a duplicate service when it really is a repeat service on the same day by the same provider or by a different provider. So make certain you're aware of those modifiers that may be billed to tell the claims processing system, if you will, that it really was not a duplicate service. I provided some information here because we had a few different reasons why claims were denying based on SNF consolidated billing. Again, you're going to need to verify eligibility to see if that patient is in a covered Part A stay. You can utilize SNAP to do that. There is a CMS website, and I'm sorry I didn't link it here. I just noticed the CMS or SNF Consolidated Billing is a web page on the CMS website. It does include downloadable links to files to verify what is or is not excluded from SNF Consolidated Billings. And because I did not include that, what I'd like to do here, and I'm working on it on the other monitor here, is to pull up that web page for you so you can see what I'm talking about. And I'm typing away here, and this is what I'm talking about. It's the CMS SNF Consolidated Billing web page. And Aline, if you wouldn't mind, please, can you place that link into the chat? Pop out to the CMS website and pull this page up and share this link. This is where you will find the updates that include the updates for SNF Consolidated Billing and also the downloads in order to use these files to determine whether your item or service that you're billing for is included or excluded from SNF Consolidated Billing. Again, just like appeals folks, I could talk a whole hour and a half and even more on SNF Consolidated Billing. It is somewhat complicated. It is great to be able to attend education where you actually talk about each of these files, or the instructor does and shows you each of these files, and we do that, but those are in recordings that are available on our website. I know that in the past when we were doing face-to-face events, we often included this in our education curriculum where we did live sessions, face-to-face sessions, and showed our providers how to use these files. But there's a lot of great information available on our SNF Consolidated playlist, and for that I did include the link to that out on our YouTube channel rather. All right, place of service. We had quite a few corrections that needed to be made because the service was billed in a place of service that was inappropriate for portable X-ray suppliers. Portable X-ray services are allowed mostly in nursing home or home settings, not in skilled nursing settings. So if I were to guess, without pulling any of those claims, to back up or verify the denials that I talked about earlier, I would guess that they're being billed any place of service other than nursing home or home, very likely skilled nursing facility. So I've included a link for you to the list of place of service codes for professional claims. That is published by CMS. We also have it available on our website as well. Transportation component and use of modifiers. I showed you this in the manual where it addresses the use of modifiers to tell Medicare there were 2 patients served, there were 3 patients served, and so on and so forth. So I've included here for you, for these codes, the instructions for use of modifiers, UN, UP, UQ, UR, and US. We also have available some information on our website about modifier use as well. Managed care, I talked about this earlier. Make sure you're asking to see the patient's insurance card and do it, you know, best case practice or best practice is to ask them every time they present, do you have a new insurance? And it could be that they're already doing that at your place. Sometimes beneficiaries don't recognize that something's changed, but ask a lot of questions. That seems to help. That's what I hear from people anyway. Verify patient eligibility using SNAP. You can also find help on Medicare Managed Care eligibility enrollment on CMS's webpage. We also have some YouTube videos available that talk about those Medicare Advantage plan denials. Bundling, this showed up too in the data. Make certain that you're checking that physician fee schedule relative value file. Look in the status code column. If there's a B or a P status code on the relative value file for that particular CPT code, that means bundled. Always bundled, never going to unbundle it. There is no modifier you can add to that service that's going to unbundle that payment if there's a B or a P status code on the relative value file. Again, you can find some CMS products that speak to how to use or how to read that relative value file, so I would recommend those. Check the Medicare National Correct Coding Initiative procedure to procedure edits. There is instructions in this using the NCCI tools, educational tool, to tell you how to read those edits and what you need to do in order to unbundle payment. You'll look at a column 1 code and a column 2 code. Payment for column 2 code bundles into payment for column 1 code. There is an edit file you can look at that will include an indicator that tells you whether, based on your documentation, whether or not you can append an NCCI associated modifier in order to unbundle payment. But that is only done when there is evidence in the medical record that the services were indeed separately identifiable, distinct and separately identifiable. So I talked about a lot of ways to avoid these, and of course that always involves using resources and tools. So here at the end of the presentation, I've pulled together a lot of great resources for you. Here are those claim form instructions that tell you what goes where on the claim form. Is it a paper claim form, the CMS 1500 claim form, or is it the electronic claim that you're submitting? I've also included the claim form instructions for the CMS 1450 data set. So you have those for Part A. We have a resource on our website called How to Correct a Rejected Claim. And this is a great resource because we actually list those reason and remark codes. So if you see it over on your remittance advice, look for that same code in this article, in this resource, and it will tell you how to fix that rejection. Similarly, we've done the same in a resource called Common Claim Denials for denials, only this time we've categorized those reason and remark codes that show up in this resource, bundling, entitlement denials, duplicates, so on and so forth. A lot of the things we've talked about today, provider number denials was one of them. Here is a link to our EDI webpage. There is when you go out to the EDI webpage, and their website is separate from the WPS website, there is this crosswalk that I want you to be aware of. When I open this crosswalk, it will show you a document that our EDI staff has created to show you if the data goes, or the information you need to submit on the claim based on the claim form instructions goes in item number 2 on the claim, where does that go on an electronic claim? And what is that information that's needed to be entered? That's all here in this crosswalk. So there's item 2, item 12, so just for different examples, okay? What I want to point out to you here is this column. I'm trying to highlight it. It's not. This column called status right here. S means situational. Yeah, this patient has another insurance. So then that means there's more you need to put on that claim, or more you need to enter on the claim about that insurance. So that's situational. R means it's required. It's got to be here, or guess what's going to happen? What happens when a claim is missing information? It's rejected. Okay. So this relates very much to all of those reasons for rejections that I talked about earlier. Something's missing, illogical, entered incorrectly, so on and so forth. So R, and that tells you right here, required. S is situational. Okay, so just another great tool to use. Resources, more, checking eligibility. There is an interactive map on the CMS website that says if you live in Michigan, or if you're in Michigan, who do you send the claim to for home health hospice? Who do you send the claim for traditional Medicare? And then of course you can find information about that railroad retirement contractor, contact information, so on and so forth. So good information there to make certain you're submitting that claim to the correct contractor. Ordering and referring files is a file on the CMS website that includes in it every single provider, Medicare provider, who is enrolled that can order or refer Medicare services. So this includes their NPI identifier and so on and so forth. So if ordering or referring information is missing from the claim, there you have it. And this, folks, was kind of a last minute add to the presentation. You do not have this information. We want to let all of you know that if you discover an overpayment or you would like WPS to set up a request for an overpayment because you discovered one, these are the ways that you can let us know about those overpayments. We have SNAP, our Secure Net Access portal. This is our preferred way for you to let us know about an overpayment you've discovered. There's links to additional information here for you. If you do not care to use SNAP and you instead choose to submit to us that notification via paper, there is an overpayment notification form you can go to on our website to fill out that information and then follow the instructions. And this again is being provided because we've noticed kind of a spike in errors related to returning overpayments to us. So we want to make certain that we give you the information you need to submit those so that we can process them timely. That brings us to questions and answers. I know we're running a little short on time. Aline, can you tell me if we've received many questions or any questions in the chat so I can speak to that just a little bit?
Hi, Mary. We have not received any questions in the chat.
Okay, well then I'll tell you in just a minute how you can send me a presentation related question following today's event. But first, I do want to talk just really quickly again about that very, very important survey. We would love your feedback on this customer experience with WPS. How did you feel about this education experience today? CMS and WPS want to know. There's different ways that you can take this survey, different options, and it really does depend on your preference. You can use the link that Aline has placed into the chat, and when you exit the webinar, there is going to be a pop-up that presents. It is not malicious. It's simply a pop-up saying you're going to be directed to another website. So you have a chance to take that important survey if you've not already done so. In your presentation materials, there is some information on the final slide, the one that thanks you for attending today, that speaks to submitting to us any presentation related questions for a period of up to 7 days. You can email me a question if you think of it later. I know there was not any questions in that chat. Send the email to wps.gha.education@wpsiz.com. Put today's topic in the subject line, and our staff that is monitoring that mailbox will make certain to send that question to me so that I can either send you an email response directly or create questions and answers and send it to everyone. Now, I know that some of you are attending today and you would like to get continuing education units or CEUs for participating today. In a few minutes, you will receive an email. It's going to come from WebEx, not from WPS, and included in the body of that email is language that serves as a certificate of achievement. It includes the name of today's event, the contact time, the date, That email is what you'll need to present to the accrediting body of your choice so they can consider awarding you with CEUs. WPS does not award CEUs. WPS gives you that certificate of achievement to forward. Now, if you're not watching this slide presentation, you joined by phone only, you will not receive that kind of email from WebEx, the one with the CEU language, but instead you're going to receive one that says, sorry, we missed you. That is because WebEx does not have your telephone information. If you need CEUs, send an email to our education mailbox, wps.gha.education@wpsic.com. Include your 10-digit phone number, the name of today's event, and the date, and we will send you an email, this time from WPS. And in the body of that email, we're going to say, this certifies your achievement, or this is your certificate of achievement for such and such webinar, and then you'll send a copy of that webinar over to an accrediting body of your choice so they can consider awarding you with CEUs. On behalf of myself and Aline and all of Provider Outreach and Education, I do want to thank you for attending our webinar. We know that you're very, very busy. We do look forward to those survey comments, and we hope you will join us for future webinars. This does include our webinar. You may now disconnect. Have a wonderful day, everyone.